What's going on, guys? It's your boy Beats by Ash, back at it again with another banger of a video. And today I wanted to talk to you guys about everything that's coming in Monster Hunter Wilds' first major update and why I think it's just not enough. So without further ado, let's get into the goo. So the reason I'm making this video is because I have been enjoying Monster Hunter Wilds since its release last month immensely. But if you're like me, when you got to the late game, you realized that the amount of content as well as the overall difficulty of the game just didn't match up to the expectations you had when comparing it to Monster Hunter Worlds as well as Monster Hunter Rise on their original respective release dates. So a couple days ago, we ended up getting an announcement that there would be a live stream on March 25th in order for the dev team to reveal a major update coming to the game releasing on April 4th. And after watching this, I felt like the update was extremely lackluster, but for some reason, all of these major content creators have been saying, "Oh my gosh, guys, I can't believe they're adding so much content to the game this early." And that is a complete bullshit lie. I don't know if these people are just getting a hard-on for Capcom representatives or if they're just mentally unstable, but that is just not the reality. And so I wanted to break down to you guys why I feel that way and why I feel like this just really is not sufficient, and why I probably would not continue playing the game as much as I currently am until multiple major updates came through if I wasn't having fun just making content in the game. Because for the average person who picks up the game and maybe it's their first or second Monster Hunter, or maybe they're a cult fan, especially if they're a cult fan, the game is going to run out of content very, very fast. And for a game that is $70 and has been in production for 5 years to just not stack up to those previous titles and then kind of blue balls us with this update that really doesn't add much content, it is kind of irritating. So I'm going to go ahead and break down everything that's coming in the first major title update 1, and hopefully by the end of this, you guys can formulate your own opinions and see how you feel about if this amount of content is sufficient and if you think that it is overall a good thing for the game or a bad thing for the game, for the direction that the development team is taking. So make sure to let me know down below in the comments. So something important to point out here is that with that live stream, not everything that they talked about will be initially coming on the date that they listed, and that's part of one of the issues that I have with this update. So the things that are actually coming on April 4th are a Misazune hunt, which is going to be pretty much a mid-level monster, essentially not adding anything to the late game, as well as essentially a gathering hub location being added to the game, which to me doesn't really feel like a lot of things that are going to be changing in the game, because with Monster Hunter Wilds, you can actually just see each other in whatever location you're in if you are in a squad lobby. So to me, I don't really see all the hype about the Grand Hub and how it's going to be crazy. There's a new location in the game. But essentially, some of the things we know that are coming in it is that there is going to be a bomb bowling mini game where you can like throw bombs and like earn resources, I guess. And they said you could earn tickets to play that by daily login bonuses, which is cool for people who just like run out of things to do, but it's nothing crazy. And pretty much just all the other standard things you would expect to come in a gathering hub if you played any previous Monster Hunter game. If you have no context to that, it's essentially just an area where all players can meet up and see each other in real time and just like emoticon each other, do random gooner shit, you know, like it's cool, man. I just want to hunt monsters and turn them into pants, but whatever you enjoy, do that. And then the other two things that are coming is arena quests, which is actually something that I feel like should have just already been in the game. So we have that arena area. I forget what it's called, but it's just that place that just has a gate you can pull up or down, and you can get investigations to go there. So we're actually going to be getting two types of arena quests, one of which is your standard where they have pre-selected loadouts, and you have to select one of those loadouts to use to go against the monster. And then we have the second type where you can use whatever gear you want and whatever skills you want. And one cool thing that is coming in this update with the arena quests is that there is going to be a leaderboard where you can see your best time on that arena quest and compare it with other people in the world, which is a feature that I think is awesome. But my issue with that is I was talking to someone recently, and I think one of the things that just is blasphemous to me that it has not been added to the Monster Hunter series yet is whenever you fight any monster on an investigation or an optional quest, just showing you next to that monster where it shows you the largest size and the smallest size that you have fought, your best time against that monster, your best time just in investigations or also in optional quests. All they need is a button and just to plug in a simple formula into the code because your time is already automatically stored. All they have to do is just input a graphic and connect that formula, and it would be super easy. And what that would do is it would make it to where people who are tired of just fighting the same monsters over and over again actually have something to work for because they can see what their time is and actually try to get a faster time, compare that to friends, and if they want to go above and beyond, also connect that to the world records. But even if they don't, that would just add so many layers to the game that I think would suffice people's hunger for more Monster Hunter content without actually adding any real content. I'm surprised that has not been added in an earlier Monster Hunter game because I feel like that's just such an easy feature to implement and would only just increase the amount of interaction that people are having with the game, which is something that you should really care about for marketing your product in any market, is increasing the amount of touch points for a customer to get with your product. And then the last thing coming on April 4th is Zoa Shia will now be available as a high rank investigation. I believe starting at Hunter rank 50, you get an optional quest and then you can see it on the investigations, and it will pop up on the investigations in the same way that Jin the Had does as the apex predator of that respective location. And that is very, very cool because if you're like me, you have been grinding the game, and when they made this announcement, you completely forgot who the hell Zoa Shia is because this actually is not a new monster. It is a monster that you face in chapter 2 or chapter 3 of the story mode, which is very early on, and then you just never get to go against it again. In fact, you do not get to fight it in high rank at all. And to me, it just feels like this monster should have been available in high rank, optional quest, and investigation as well already. But that is cool that that's being added because that monster specifically does have a really cool armored set in terms of the aesthetic it provides. It gives your armor kind of a black and white contrast theme as well as your weapons. And I think that is amazing. My issue is that I feel like that is something that should have just already been in the game and makes absolutely no sense to me to repackage as an update for content that's essentially already in the game. You're just repurposing essentially work that you should have done in the beginning to be considered a update. And that kind of irritates me because everyone's saying, oh my gosh, they're making so much content. How are they adding so much content in the first update? I'm literally edging. And that, I just don't understand that because my biggest issue with the game currently, when we compare it to Monster Hunter World as well as Monster Hunter Rise / Sunbreak, is that in Monster Hunter World, the end game amount of monsters are Nergigante, Kushaladora, Teostra, Valhazak, as well as Xenojiva. Those are 5 high-rank monsters that are essentially considered the end game of the base game Monster Hunter World when it was initially released, plus the hidden boss Kirin. So that is a total of 6 monsters that all had Rarity 7 or Rarity 8 armor sets as well as weapons, which added a lot of customization and replayability to the end game of that game initially, which I think just adds so many more hours. And also, the difficulty of those monsters is actually like 2 times as high. The HP of those monsters, I believe, is literally 2 times as high. The HP of the monsters in Rise are 3 times as high. Not to mention that those monsters in World, also, you got drastically less resources for killing them. So when you were in base World, and I remember going against Val Hazak, and I had to fight it 10 times just to get one piece of armor because I needed a stupid gem that had a terrible drop rate. Obviously, no one likes it when the grinding is like legitimately, 20 hours to get an armor set, but there is a middle ground because one of the things holding back this game is that you can fight a monster legitimately 2 times and have a complete armor set. It is actually crazy how many rewards they throw at you and how they went out of their way to actually decrease the amount of content in a game. Typically with products, typically with drug dealers, if you have a product, if you have cocaine, you want to mix that with other things to stretch it so that you can get more out of your customers. And Capcom actually decided to do the opposite. Because when I say that the HP of the monsters in Monster Hunter World is 2 times as high, and they are 3 times as high in Rise, the reason why Rise's monsters have more HP than any other game is because of the Wedgebug Beetle system, which essentially gives you power-ups, and as well as the Wyvern Riding system, which lets you control monsters like a puppet and mash them into other monsters. Essentially, that mechanic does so much damage to the monsters that the additional HP evens out its difficulty with prior titles in the series. Well, when we compare that to Monster Hunter Wilds, not only do the monsters have half the HP, we also got introduced to the new focus system, which I don't know the specific numbers, but the focus system feels fucking broken. Like, I'm literally playing bow, and I hold down RB, and every single wound or potential breakable part is automatically highlighted, and a heat-seeking missile shoots out to blow up that wound and stun the monster for a couple of seconds while the other people just continue to hit it, and I'm just stun locking them for a minute with essentially no skill each time, getting a massive hit in and doing a drastic amount of damage. In my mind, fundamentally, I feel like with how much additional damage that adds to the fights, and then you compare that to base world before the Clutch Claw was added, and there was no gimmick that increased the speed of these hunts, you would want the HP of the monsters to at least be higher than world, like a little bit higher. For them to be essentially half is just dumb to me. Like, it makes no sense because you're going to get people playing the game for a shorter amount of time, and then they're not going to be playing the game when you actually release this paid cosmetics, or they come out with the mega expansion like they did with Iceborne or Sunbreak, right? Like, that just doesn't make sense to me fundamentally from a marketing perspective. And I really started to think about that as I was, playing with other people and, talking about why they stopped playing already and why I'm still playing. And it's basically just comes down to the fact that, like, I'm enjoying making content with the game, and I'm also, like, not that good, and I enjoy getting better and trying to, like, do speed runs and get better times and just learn all the techniques and weapons. But I'm sure for a person who's been playing Monster Hunter games for the past 10 years and is already, like, pretty fluent with every single weapon in the game, and is overall just good at fighting monsters in the series, then they probably blew past the content in like 2 weeks or less. And I want to be generous here when I say this. The new content that's being added on this date, if we want to be generous, it's like 4 hours of content, unless they make major changes to the overall grinding system and the reward structure. Because let's say Zoashia adds a new armor set, you may only need to fight Zoashia 5 times. Unless you just want to get the armor set and every single weapon for every single different type of weapon in the game, that's not going to take you that long. And Mitsuzune is actually confirmed to be a middle rank monster, not even like, a tier 7 or tier 8 armor set. So you may not even want to farm Mitsuzune. You may just want to fight it for fun a couple times. I don't really know, but that's kind of what they've been speculating, which makes the content even seem like less hours of your time. And I think that's like really, really weird when I feel like a lot of people have been voicing their frustrations at these issues I've just named. And one big part of this that I forgot to weave in together is that basically in the end game of Wilds right now, there are essentially 2 monsters that you want to go against on high rank investigations. That is Arkfeld as well as Gore Magala. Every once in a while, you may get a random decent mission to fight Rei Dao or to fight Jin Dahad, but realistically, I'm not even that good at the game. And I can solo every single monster in the game in 5 minutes outside of Tempered Arkfeld and Tempered Gore Magala. But that's not really the point. The point is that those 2 armor sets, the Gore set and the Arkfeld set, are basically the only 2 high rarity armor sets in the game. So there is a lack of customization in the late game, whereas in Monster Hunter World, I don't know if Monster Hunter World had more monsters initially or not, but what I can say with what I said about the 5 or 6 big endgame threats you actually wanted to face in that game on initial release is that the overall structure of the difficulty and the armor sets of those monsters is drastically far and few between from World to Monster Hunter Wilds. Because in Wilds, right now, if you want to use an endgame armor set, basically every single endgame gear set includes minimum 3 to 4 pieces of armor from either the Gore set or the Arkfeld set, which drastically limits your combinations of builds you can make comparatively to something like World, where you would oftentimes use pieces of armor from the Nergigante set, the Kushaladora set, the Teostra set, the Valhazak set, or even Xenojiva and Kirin. So it's 6 armor sets that were viable, as well as, I think the Rathalos, I remember, was decent in the beginning. There might be 7 or 8 viable armor sets where you can mix and match pieces to make different builds in Monster Hunter World Base Edition. Whereas in Monster Hunter Wilds, there's really 2 to 3. And all they had to do was restructure some of these other monsters like the Ajarkin or maybe the monkey dude that you fight right before Gore Magala, the Bladora or whatever it is, that guy. If they would have just made those rarity 8 armor sets, or even, just increase the rarity and the actual usefulness of the other Apex Predators to rarity 7 or rarity 8, I think overall, you would have players spending limitless more amounts of time, even though there's not a bunch of new monsters to play against, because at that point, there's at least variety of monsters you want to go against. 5 or 6 monsters that you actually want to face in investigations, that's enough to keep you busy, as well as the massive difference in customization of armor sets for multiple hundreds of hours. I feel like when it really all comes down to it, is that it almost feels like this game was not really made for your longtime fan of Monster Hunter like you or me. It was made to connect people to the game that have never played Monster Hunter and are likely small children. Because let's be real, I didn't play in the beginning of the Monster Hunter series, but I remember seeing the games at Vintage Stock and GameStop, and I always knew the reason people liked Monster Hunter games is because they are very difficult, very punishing, and very, very skill-based, And even though you're going to die a lot as a new player, it feels very rewarding to finally master a monster and finally increase your overall skill. And I feel like we're seeing a shift in the change of direction for this game, where I've heard a lot of people say, I had family members or friends or my girlfriend who would never play previous Monster Hunters, but because they made this game so easy, they are now getting those people into the game. And I feel like those people don't really care about playing the game past the end of the story mode and are likely not going to come back when these new updates come around. Maybe when we get the big expansion, but still, like, I feel like they're just losing out on a large percentage of the player base that essentially built the community that surrounds the IP and allowed it to get to this level. And this update almost just feels like a slap in the face to those OG players. Like, I played all of Monster Hunter World, all of Monster Hunter Iceborne, and then I played Monster Hunter Rise with my brother, and I mainly used it as an outlet just to hang out with him. And so I didn't actually get past, I think, more than just the high rank, and I totally didn't get past getting to the point where I need to buy Sunbreak. And I'm genuinely thinking and considering about putting down Monster Hunter Wilds and going back to pick up that game, just because Monster Hunter Wilds got me into the mood of playing the franchise, and it made me excited about all of the great quality of life updates to the game, but it feels like there's a limit on the challenge you can present yourself, and it's kind of getting to me. But other than that, later on, we will be receiving the festival event for the Gathering Hub, the Festival of Accord, essentially. And, you know, we've seen other festive events before in Monster Hunter World, where you had the Call Teroth raid or whatever, and you get special food items to order. It'll be interesting to see how that works out, I guess, because, you know, in this game, you actually just make everything yourself. The cats don't make your food. But that's also not even coming until April 22nd. And then also on April 29th, we get Arch-Tempered Ray Dao, which actually is going to be very awesome because there are currently no Arch-Tempered monsters in the game. But again, it is not coming until April 29th, and it just feels like even if they bundled all this stuff together, it wouldn't even be that crazy of an update, but it would make me feel better because Arch-Tempered Ray Dao is without a doubt going to add at least one more viable armor set to the game to mix and match combinations and add just another overarching challenge besides Gore Magala and Arkfeld, right? But that's coming out, and that's going to be fun. I only wish it was coming out sooner. And then at the end of May, we get a Capcom collaboration. I don't really know what that means. I do remember in Monster Hunter World when they had the Capcom collaboration and they decided to add in the Mega Man layered armor. That was dope as fuck. So maybe we'll get something like that. And then Title Update 2 is planned for summer, which feels like a long time away with how limited content is being added to the game. So hopefully we get some event quests added to the game in between then that actually at least add a couple new pieces of viable armor just to mix things up, because I really don't want to stop playing this game for the time being. You know, maybe I'll take a break for a bit. But I just love the fluidity of combat in this game. I only wish that it had more initial replayability. And I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not asking for it to even have half of the content that is currently in World or Sunbreak, right? I just wanted there to be a little bit more, and I think a little bit really goes a long way. In that Title Update 2, we are getting the Lakuga, or whatever, however you say it. It is the water monster that I believe was used in Monster Hunter Generations or Monster Hunter Ultimate 4. I didn't play either of those games. I've just been hearing about it, but that's actually going to be, I think, a more endgame boss, which is cool that that's being added to the game. But hopefully that update actually adds more than just that monster, and it just adds more levels of depth to this game, because I definitely want to continue on my Monster Hunter Wilds journey. if there's actually things left for me to do. But let me know what you guys think down below about these updates that are coming and how you're just overall enjoying the game. If you are still pissed about the computer optimization because it's complete dog shit, or any other thoughts that you currently have about this topic. But regardless, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. May the Lord bless you, keep you, bestow his countenance upon you, and give you peace. And you already know, if it's not the goo, it's got to go. Peace.
Ooh, is that indigo?